The first thing you need to know about my wife Alicia is that she's never wrong. At least, that's what her Instagram followers believe. Perfect yoga poses at sunrise, organic smoothie bowls arranged like art, motivational quotes over sunset photos, the whole influencer package wrapped up in a size 4 body with a smile that could sell ice to Eskimos. The second thing you need to know is that she's been screwing my best friend's husband for 3 months. My name's Greg Landon, and I manage 4 restaurants in downtown Portland. Not glamorous work, but it pays for Alicia's organic everything and keeps us in our high-rise apartment with the view she loves to photograph. I used to box semi-professionally before a busted shoulder ended that dream, but the reflexes and the cynicism stuck around. "Greg, honey, I'm not coming to your birthday party," Alicia announced while adjusting her ring light for another selfie session. She didn't look up from her phone. "Your friends are honestly just depressing. All they do is complain about their jobs and drink cheap beer." I was standing in our kitchen, coffee mug halfway to my lips, watching my wife of 5 years dismiss the people who'd been there for me since college. Richard, my tech consultant buddy with the dry humor. Mike, my old boxing partner who now teaches kids at the community center. These weren't losers. They were good men with real jobs and real problems. "No problem," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'll celebrate with people who actually want to be there." That got her attention. She looked up, blue eyes flashing with something between surprise and irritation. "Don't be dramatic. It's just one night." "Yeah, it's just my 35th birthday. No big deal." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. She set down her phone with that practiced sigh she used when I was being difficult. "Look, I have that collaboration meeting with the wellness brand on Monday. I need to prep content all weekend. This is important for us, Greg, for our future." Our future. Right. The future where she built her brand on the foundation of our supposedly perfect marriage while secretly texting another man. I'd seen the messages 3 days ago when she left her phone on the counter. Dom Rivas, married to her best friend Susie, factory foreman, gym rat, and apparently the answer to whatever was missing in our bedroom. "Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about you in that black dress." That was the text that shattered my world, followed by her response. "You make me feel alive again. Greg doesn't even notice when I get dressed up anymore." I noticed everything. The late-night gym sessions that started 2 months ago. The way she angled her phone away from me when texting. The new lingerie that never made an appearance in our bedroom. The sudden interest in Dom and Susie's social events. "Fine," I said, taking a long sip of coffee. "I'll throw the party on the rooftop. Should be fun." She was already back to her phone, adjusting angles for the perfect shot. "Whatever makes you happy, honey." That evening, I called Richard to finalize plans for Saturday night. We'd use the building's rooftop space, string up some lights, get decent beer and food, keep it simple. Just the guys and whoever else wanted to celebrate. "You sure Alicia's not coming?" Richard asked. He'd never liked her much, though he was too polite to say it directly. "Seems weird for a wife to skip her husband's birthday." "She's busy building her empire," I said, not bothering to hide the bitterness. "One sponsored post at a time." "Dude, you sound rough. Everything okay?" I almost told him. Almost spilled everything about the texts, the lies, the growing certainty that my marriage was a performance for social media. But not yet. I needed to think, to plan. "Just tired of being married to a smartphone," I said instead. Saturday arrived with typical Portland drizzle that cleared up just in time for the party. I'd invited about 20 people, work friends, old boxing buddies, neighbors from the building. Richard brought his new girlfriend, a teacher named Amy, who actually listened when people talked. Mike showed up with war stories from the gym and a bottle of good whiskey. The surprise guest was Jenny Martinez, Alicia's former roommate from college. She was in town for work and saw my Instagram story about the party. Jenny was everything Alicia used to be: funny, down to earth, interested in other people's lives. We'd always gotten along well, which had made Alicia uncomfortable even back then. "Greg, happy birthday, stranger," Jenny said, giving me a genuine hug. She brought craft beer from a local brewery and stories about her job as a social worker in Seattle. Within an hour, she was deep in conversation with Richard and Mike, laughing at their jokes and asking follow-up questions like a normal human being. I posted a few Instagram stories throughout the night: group shots, the city skyline, Jenny and me raising beers to the camera with big smiles. Nothing inappropriate, just friends having fun. But I knew Alicia would see them. I knew she'd notice Jenny's presence, the genuine laughter, the fact that I was clearly enjoying myself without her. The texts started around 10 p.m. "Who's the girl in your stories?" "Jenny Martinez, your old roommate, remember?" "What's she doing there?" "Celebrating my birthday like friends do." The typing indicator appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, "We need to talk when you get home." I showed the exchange to Richard, who shook his head. "Man, she's really something else. Gets jealous about you having fun at your own birthday party that she didn't want to attend." "It's the control thing," Amy chimed in. She'd been quiet most of the evening, observing. "She doesn't want to participate, but she also doesn't want you to enjoy yourself without her. Classic manipulation." Jenny overheard and raised an eyebrow. Alicia always was possessive. Even in college, she'd get weird if you talked to other girls at parties. I thought she'd grown out of it. "People don't grow out of who they really are," Mike said, refilling his whiskey. "They just get better at hiding it." The party wound down around midnight. Jenny gave me another hug goodbye, slipping me her business card with her personal number written on the back. "Stay in touch, Greg, and happy birthday. You deserve better than whatever's making you look so tired these days." I found Alicia waiting in our living room when I got upstairs, still in her workout clothes from an evening training session. Her hair was perfect, makeup intact, not exactly post-gym condition. "So," she said, not looking up from her phone. "Jenny Martinez." "Yeah, she was in town. Saw the party invite and stopped by. It was nice catching up." "I bet it was." Her voice had that edge I'd learned to recognize over the years. "She always had a thing for you, you know." "She's married, Alicia. Happily, from what I can tell." "That doesn't mean anything these days." The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. Here was my wife, fresh from screwing another woman's husband, lecturing me about the sanctity of marriage because her former roommate had attended my birthday party. "You're right," I said carefully. "Married people should probably be more careful about who they spend their time with." She finally looked up, studying my face for hidden meaning. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just agreeing with you." But something in my tone must have triggered her radar. She set down her phone and really looked at me for the first time in weeks. "Greg, is everything okay with us?" For a moment, I considered telling her everything, laying out the evidence, demanding the truth, giving her a chance to explain or apologize or fight for our marriage. But the moment passed. She'd made her choice 3 months ago when she started meeting Dom at hotels. She'd made it again tonight when she chose her training session over my birthday. "Everything's fine," I said. "I'm going to bed." I left her sitting in the living room, probably already crafting tomorrow's Instagram post about the importance of trust and communication in relationships. The comments would pour in from her followers, thousands of people who believed in the fairy tale she'd constructed online. But I knew the truth now, and tomorrow I'd start figuring out what to do about it. Sunday morning brought the hangover I deserved and a text from Jenny that I didn't expect. "Thanks for a great night. Your friends are awesome. Hope Alicia wasn't too upset about the party crasher." I was reading it over coffee when Alicia emerged from the bedroom in full workout gear, phone already in hand for her morning routine. She'd been up for an hour, judging by the fresh makeup and perfectly arranged hair. "Good morning, sunshine," she said, without looking at me, positioning herself by the window for optimal lighting. "How's the head?" "I'll live. You're up early for a Sunday." "Dom's leading a special training session at the gym, high-intensity interval stuff." She snapped a series of selfies, checking each one with the focus of a surgeon. "I should be back by noon." Dom's training session. Of course. I watched her perform her morning ritual, the carefully curated glimpse into our perfect life that would be posted throughout the day. The expensive coffee machine I'd bought her for Christmas, the organic fruit bowl arranged just so. The motivational quote about living your best life overlaid on a photo of our city view. "Sounds intense," I said. "It is. But that's how you get results, right? You have to push past your comfort zone." She was talking about more than fitness, and we both knew it. This was her way of justifying whatever was happening with Dom, framing it as personal growth, as becoming her best self. The rationalization of someone who'd convinced herself that betrayal was actually empowerment. After she left, I did something I'd never done before. I followed her. Not immediately. I waited 15 minutes, then drove to the gym she claimed to attend. It was a CrossFit place downtown, all concrete and exposed pipes, the kind of aggressively masculine space that attracted people like Dom. I parked across the street and waited. She never showed up, but I knew where she was. The Marriott downtown had a bar that opened at 11 on Sundays, tucked away from the main lobby, discreet, private, perfect for people who needed to keep their meetings secret. I found them at a corner table, heads close together over mimosas. Dom was everything I wasn't. 6'2", broad shoulders, the kind of easy confidence that came from never doubting your place in the world. He wore a tight black t-shirt that showed off his gym-sculpted arms and a smile that probably worked on every woman he'd ever met. Except this woman was my wife. I watched them for 20 minutes from the lobby, hidden behind a newspaper like some discount private investigator. They touched constantly, his hand on her arm, her fingers tracing patterns on his wrist. When she laughed at something he said, she threw her head back in a way I hadn't seen in years. She looked alive, electric, completely absorbed in someone who wasn't me. The rage hit me like a physical blow, not just anger, pure, white-hot fury that made my vision blur and my hands shake. This wasn't some emotional affair, some gradual drift apart. This was deliberate, calculated betrayal. She was choosing him, choosing this lie, choosing to make me look like a fool while she played house with another woman's husband. I left before I did something stupid. But I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to Dom's neighborhood, a working-class area about 20 minutes from downtown. His house was easy to spot, the only one with a lifted Jeep Wrangler in the driveway, license plate reading Dom 8R. Subtle. Susie's car wasn't there. She was probably at home, maybe making Sunday dinner, maybe posting her own Instagram stories about family time and gratitude. Completely unaware that her husband was downtown buying my wife drinks and planning their next hotel rendezvous. I sat in my car for an hour, wrestling with the urge to do something destructive. Key the Jeep, break a window, leave a note that would blow up their little secret. But that wasn't the play. Not yet. When I finally got home, Alicia was already back, showered and changed, meal prepping for the week with the dedication of someone documenting every moment for social media. "How was training?" I asked. "Brutal. Dom really pushed us today. I can barely lift my arms." She demonstrated with an exaggerated wince that would have been convincing if I hadn't seen her lifting mimosas 2 hours earlier. "That's weird," I said, pulling out my phone. "I drove by the gym around noon. Looked pretty empty." Her hands stilled on the quinoa she was measuring. "You drove by the gym?" "Yeah, I was meeting Richard for lunch nearby. Figured I'd wave if I saw you through the windows." I watched her face carefully. "Must have just missed you." Oh, yeah, we finished up right around noon. You probably saw us leaving. The lie came so easily, so smoothly, that I almost admired the skill involved. She'd constructed an entire alternate reality where her betrayal was actually self-improvement, where her lies were just privacy, where I was the problem for being suspicious. Must have, I agreed. That night, while she was in the shower, I went through her phone. I know it was wrong. I know it violated her privacy, crossed lines that healthy couples don't cross, but healthy couples don't meet their lovers at hotel bars while lying about gym sessions either. The messages with Dom went back 3 months, just as I'd suspected, but they were worse than I'd imagined. It wasn't just a physical affair, it was an emotional betrayal that cut deeper than any intimacy ever could. Greg doesn't understand me like you do. He's so focused on work, so predictable. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating. You deserve better than that. You deserve someone who sees how amazing you are. I keep thinking about last Tuesday. The way you looked at me. No one's ever made me feel that beautiful. We should go away together, just a weekend, somewhere we can be ourselves. I want that so badly, but it's complicated with Greg. He'd never understand. Maybe it's time to stop worrying about what Greg understands. 3 months of this. 3 months of planning, scheming, building a relationship while dismantling our marriage. And through it all, she'd been posting about us on Instagram, anniversary throwbacks, date night selfies, inspirational quotes about love and commitment. The shower was still running. I scrolled further, looking for something I could use, some evidence that would justify what I was planning to do. And I found it. A voice message from 2 weeks ago sent while I was working late at the restaurant. Dom's voice, slightly drunk, saying things that would destroy his marriage and hers if the right people heard them. I forwarded the message to myself, then deleted the evidence from her phone. By the time she emerged from the bathroom in her silk pajamas, I was in bed reading a book like nothing had happened. "You're quiet tonight," she said, settling beside me with her own phone for her nightly social media routine. "Just thinking about work stuff. The new restaurant opening?" I looked at her, really looked at her. Still beautiful, still the woman I'd fallen in love with 7 years ago. But that woman had been real. This one was a performance, a carefully constructed character designed to get what she wanted from whoever was watching. "Yeah," I said, "just trying to figure out my next move." She smiled and kissed my cheek, already turning back to her phone to schedule tomorrow's posts. "You'll figure it out, you always do." But she was wrong about that. For 3 months, I'd been completely clueless, living in a marriage that existed only for the cameras while my wife built a new life with someone else. That was about to change. Monday morning brought clarity along with my usual coffee. Sitting in my office at the restaurant, reviewing weekend receipts and pretending to care about profit margins, I finally understood what needed to happen. I wasn't going to confront Alicia directly. I wasn't going to have some dramatic showdown where she'd cry and apologize and promise to change. People like her didn't change, they just got better at hiding who they really were. No, this required a different approach. Something more surgical, more public. The first step was information gathering. I called in a favor with Lisa Chen, a private investigator I'd met through work when we'd had employee theft issues. She was discreet, professional, and expensive. But this wasn't about money anymore. "I need you to document an affair," I told her over lunch at a restaurant across town. "My wife and a man named Dominic Rivas. I don't need anything illegal or dramatic, just proof of when and where they meet." Lisa was in her 40s, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. She'd seen every variation of human betrayal and treated it all like paperwork. "How long do you need?" 2 weeks should be enough. I want dates, times, locations, photos if possible, but nothing that violates privacy laws." "What's the endgame here? Divorce proceedings?" I considered that. Divorce would be the logical next step, the adult way to handle this situation. But divorce was private, contained, something that happened behind closed doors with lawyers and mediators. Alicia would spin it as growing apart or wanting different things. She'd keep her followers, her brand, her carefully constructed image. That wasn't enough. Maybe eventually, I said. Right now, I just want the truth documented. While Lisa did her work, I started mine. The voice message I'd copied from Alicia's phone was just the beginning. I needed more. Context, witnesses, a way to make their affair undeniably public. The opportunity came that Wednesday when Richard invited me to drinks after work. We met at Murphy's, a dive bar near the restaurant district that served good whiskey and minded its own business. "You look like hell," Richard said after ordering our usual. "What's going on?" I'd been debating how much to tell him. Richard was loyal, discreet, and had never liked Alicia much. But he was also ethical, the kind of guy who believed in taking the high road even when the low road was more satisfying. "Alicia's having an affair," I said without preamble. He paused with his glass halfway to his lips. "Jesus, you're sure?" "Completely. 3 months with Dom Rivas, Susie's husband." "Susie from the neighborhood barbecues? The one with the kids?" "That's the one." Richard set down his drink and leaned back in his chair. "Damn, I'm sorry. That's really messed up." "It gets worse. She's been lying about it constantly. Fake gym sessions, made-up work meetings. And through it all, she's posting on Instagram about our perfect marriage and giving relationship advice to her followers. What are you going to do?" This was the moment of truth. I could tell Richard I was planning a civilized divorce, that I wanted to handle things quietly and maturely. He'd support that decision, probably offer to help me find a good lawyer. Instead, I told him the truth. "I'm going to destroy her," I said. "Publicly, completely, in a way that makes it impossible for her to spin or recover from. She wants to perform our marriage for an audience? Fine. They're going to see the real ending." Richard was quiet for a long moment. "Greg, I get that you're angry. I'd be furious too. But think about this carefully. Revenge has a way of backfiring." "This isn't revenge," I said. "It's consequences. She made choices, and now she gets to live with them in public instead of hiding behind lies." "What about Dom? And Susie?" "Dom made his choices too. As for Susie, I thought about her Instagram posts, the happy family photos, the complete obliviousness to what was happening in her own marriage. She deserves to know the truth." Richard signaled for another round. "Okay, what do you need from me?" That weekend, I put the first phase of my plan into motion. Alicia was at another training session, which Lisa had already confirmed was actually a shopping trip with Dom to a mall in the suburbs. They weren't even trying to be discreet anymore. I drove to Jenny Martinez's hotel. She was still in town, extending her business trip to catch up with old friends. I'd texted her Thursday night, suggesting coffee and a chance to continue our conversation from the birthday party. "Greg, this is a nice surprise," she said when she met me in the hotel lobby. She looked genuinely happy to see me, which was a refreshing change from the performance anxiety I'd grown used to at home. We went to a coffee shop in the Pearl District, one of Alicia's favorite spots for Instagram photos. The kind of place where every table was perfectly lit and every latte came with foam art. "So," Jenny said once we'd settled in with our drinks, "how are things really? You seemed pretty stressed at the party." "Marriage is complicated," I said, which was both true and completely inadequate. "It doesn't have to be. My husband and I have our issues, but we talk about them. We don't perform happiness for other people while being miserable in private." She was perceptive, probably too perceptive for her own good. "Is that what you think Alicia and I are doing?" Jenny stirred her latte thoughtfully. "I think Alicia has always been more concerned with how things look than how they actually are. Even in college, she'd rather have a boyfriend who looked good in photos than one who actually made her happy." "And what kind of boyfriend was I?" "The kind who made her happy," Jenny said without hesitation. At least you did back then. She used to talk about you constantly, how funny you were, how you actually listened to her, how you didn't just see her as a pretty face. Things change. People change, but not always for the better. We talked for 2 hours, about college, about careers, about the difference between the life you plan and the life you actually get. Jenny was easy to talk to, genuinely interested in my answers, quick to laugh at my jokes. Everything that had drawn me to Alicia in the first place, but without the calculation, without the constant awareness of who might be watching. I made sure to post a few Instagram stories during our coffee date. Nothing romantic or inappropriate, just 2 old friends catching up. But I knew Alicia would see them. I knew she'd notice Jenny's genuine smile, the relaxed way we interacted, the fact that I looked happier than I had in months. The reaction was immediate. "Having coffee with Jenny again?" Alicia texted while I was driving home. "Yeah, she's good company, easy to talk to." "I'm sure she is." "Problem?" "No problem. Just interesting that you're spending so much time with my old roommate." "We've talked twice in 5 years. That's hardly so much time." But I knew it bothered her. Not because she was jealous. She'd forfeited that right 3 months ago. But because it disrupted her narrative. In her version of our story, I was the boring, predictable husband who couldn't understand her need for excitement and growth. The idea that I might be capable of connecting with someone else, of being interesting and funny and worth spending time with, challenged that comfortable fiction. When I got home, she was waiting with her laptop open, editing photos from her afternoon with Dom. She'd cropped him out of most of them, but I could see his reflection in her sunglasses, his hand on her shoulder in the ones she'd decided not to post. "Good coffee date?" she asked without looking up. "Yeah. Jenny's doing really interesting work in Seattle. Community outreach programs for at-risk kids. Makes my restaurant management seem pretty trivial." She clicked through photos with mechanical precision. She always was the type to make everything about helping people. Very noble. The dismissiveness in her voice was telling. Jenny threatened her because Jenny represented authenticity, real work, real relationships, real conversations about things that mattered. Everything Alicia had traded away in pursuit of Instagram perfection. "She asked about you." I lied smoothly. "Wondered how your influencer career was going." That got her attention. "What did you tell her?" "That you were building something amazing. That you'd found your calling helping people live their best lives." She smiled at that. The first genuine expression I'd seen from her all week. Not because she was happy, but because I'd validated the story she told herself about her choices. "I am helping people," she said. "You'd be surprised how many women message me about feeling stuck in their relationships, about wanting more from life. I bet you give great advice about that." I try to be honest about the importance of personal growth, about not settling for less than you deserve. The irony was staggering. Here was my wife, fresh from an afternoon with her lover, lecturing me about not settling while she systematically destroyed our marriage in pursuit of whatever Dom represented to her. But I just nodded and smiled, playing the role of the supportive husband while mentally cataloging every word for future use. "You're right," I said. "People shouldn't settle for less than they deserve." She went back to her photos, satisfied that she'd made her point. But she'd actually made mine. By the time this was over, everyone would know exactly what Alicia Landon deserved. The neighborhood block party had been Susie's idea, planned for the last Saturday in October. She'd been organizing it for weeks, coordinating potluck assignments, arranging tables and chairs, creating a Facebook event that half the building had joined. It was exactly the kind of community gathering that Alicia loved to attend, not for the people, but for the content opportunities. I volunteered to help set up, which surprised Alicia but pleased Susie. She was a genuinely nice woman, the kind who remembered everyone's birthdays and brought soup when you were sick. She deserved better than Dom, and she certainly deserved to know the truth about her marriage. "Greg, you're a lifesaver," Susie said, as I helped her arrange tables in the building's courtyard. Dom was supposed to help, but he had some emergency at the factory. Another lie. Lisa had confirmed that Dom was actually at the gym, working out while his wife did the heavy lifting for their social obligations. It was a pattern. Susie handled the emotional labor while Dom focused on his image, his body, his own needs. Happy to help, I said. Community events like this are important. Alicia's so lucky to have you. Dom barely notices when I plan these things, let alone offers to help. I could have told her why Dom was distracted, why his attention was elsewhere. But that conversation would happen soon enough, in front of the right audience. The party was scheduled to start at 5. By 4:30, I had everything in place. Not just the tables and chairs, but the technology. A small Bluetooth speaker connected to my phone, positioned near the main seating area. A backup battery pack. The voice message from Dom, ready to play at the perfect moment. Alicia arrived fashionably late, of course, carrying a store-bought salad that she'd transferred to one of our nice bowls. She looked stunning. Little black dress, perfect makeup, hair styled for maximum Instagram impact. She immediately started working the crowd, taking selfies with neighbors, positioning herself for the best lighting. Dom showed up 20 minutes later, directly from the gym, judging by his still damp hair and tight t-shirt. He made a beeline for the beer table, then spent several minutes talking to Alicia while Susie was distracted with party logistics. I watched them carefully, the subtle touches, the shared glances, the way they positioned themselves just outside their spouses' sightlines. Richard arrived with Amy, followed by Mike and several other friends from my birthday party. I'd specifically invited them, knowing I'd need witnesses for what was about to happen. Nice turnout, Richard said, accepting a beer and surveying the crowd. Very suburban. Wait for it, I said quietly. The party hit its stride around 6:30. People were relaxed, loosened up by alcohol and good weather. Alicia was holding court near the fountain, regaling a group of neighbors with stories about her latest brand partnerships. Dom was playing cornhole with some of the other husbands, loud and competitive and completely in his element. Susie was everywhere at once, making sure everyone had food and drinks, that conversations were flowing, that her party was the success she'd envisioned. She looked happy, proud of what she'd created. It was time to destroy that happiness. I walked over to where my phone was connected to the speaker, pretending to adjust the music volume. The current playlist was Susie's, upbeat pop songs that created a festive atmosphere, but I had a different soundtrack in mind. Hey everyone, I called out, loud enough to get attention without seeming aggressive. Susie, this party is amazing. You've really outdone yourself. She beamed, pleased by the public recognition. Thanks, Greg. It's so nice to see everyone together like this. Absolutely. Community is everything, right? Being honest with each other, supporting each other through good times and bad. I paused, making sure I had the room's attention. Speaking of honesty, I think there's something everyone should hear. I hit play. Dom's voice filled the courtyard, slightly slurred from whatever he'd been drinking when he recorded the message 2 weeks earlier. God, Alicia, I can't stop thinking about this afternoon. The way you looked in that hotel room. Susie never makes me feel like that anymore. She's so focused on the kids, on these stupid neighborhood parties. You make me feel alive again, like I'm not just some suburban dad going through the motions. The silence that followed was absolute. 30 people frozen in place, drinks halfway to lips, conversations cut off mid-sentence. All eyes moving between me, Alicia, Dom, and Susie as the implications sank in. Alicia recovered first, her influencer training kicking in. Greg, what the hell? But I wasn't finished. I had more ammunition, and this was my moment to use it. There's more, I said, scrolling through my phone. 3 months of messages, actually. Planning hotel meetings, talking about their future together, discussing how boring their actual spouses are. Dom stepped forward, his face red with anger and embarrassment. You son of a bastard, where did you get? From my wife's phone. I said calmly. Amazing what people leave lying around when they think they're smarter than everyone else. Susie was staring at Dom like she'd never seen him before. Is this real? Dom? Tell me this isn't real. Dom looked around the courtyard, at 30 neighbors and friends waiting for his answer. He could have denied it, claimed the audio was fake, tried to gaslight his way out of the situation. Instead, he chose honesty for probably the first time in months. Susie, we need to talk, privately. No. Her voice was steady, controlled, but I could see the tremor in her hands. You want to humiliate me in front of our friends? Fine. We'll discuss it in front of our friends. She turned to Alicia, who was frantically typing on her phone, probably trying to figure out how to spin this disaster for her followers. How long? Susie asked. Susie, this isn't how I wanted you to find out. How long, Alicia? 3 months, I answered when Alicia hesitated. Since July. They've been very careful about it, very discreet. Lots of fake gym sessions and emergency work meetings. Amy stepped closer to Richard, her teacher instincts recognizing a situation spiraling out of control. Mike was filming everything on his phone, probably for evidence in the inevitable divorce proceedings. The other neighbors were backing away, unsure whether to leave or stay for the conclusion of the drama. 3 months, Susie repeated. She looked at Dom with something approaching curiosity. 3 months of lying to my face, of letting me plan parties and make dinner and take care of your children while you were screwing my friend. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? Susie's composure was cracking now, years of suppressed frustration boiling over. Were you planning to tell me eventually, or just keep lying until I figured it out myself? Dom looked to Alicia for support, but she was in full damage control mode, already crafting her defense. This is a private matter, Alicia said, addressing the crowd with her practiced public speaking voice. Between families. It doesn't concern anyone else. Really? I pulled out my phone again. Because according to your Instagram, our marriage concerns 50,000 followers. You've been posting about our perfect relationship while planning your exit strategy. Seems like public business to me. I started reading from her recent posts, the inspirational quotes about love and commitment that she'd shared while texting Dom about hotel rooms and weekend getaways. The contrast was devastating. Her public persona of the devoted wife alongside the private reality of calculated betrayal. Stop, Alicia said, but her voice lacked conviction. She knew this was over, that her carefully constructed image was collapsing in real time. Why should I stop? You didn't stop when you were destroying our marriage. Dom didn't stop when he was lying to his wife and children. I looked around the courtyard, making eye contact with our neighbors, our friends, the community that had watched our relationships play out over the years. Everyone here deserves to know who they're really dealing with. Susie walked over to Dom, her movements deliberate and controlled. For a moment, I thought she might hit him. Instead, she took off her wedding ring and dropped it at his feet. Get out of my house, she said quietly. Tonight, take whatever you need and get out. Susie, please, we can work through this. Get out, or I'll call the police and tell them you're trespassing. Dom looked around the courtyard one more time, perhaps hoping for sympathy or support. He found none. Even his gym buddies were staring at him with disgust, recognizing the betrayal for what it was. He left without another word, walking past the tables of food and abandoned conversations, past the decorations Susie had spent weeks planning. The party was over, but the real drama was just beginning. Alicia tried to follow him, but I blocked her path. Where are you going? I asked. This is insane, Greg. You've lost your mind. Have I? Or have I just stopped pretending that our marriage is something it isn't? She looked around at the faces watching us, neighbors who'd seen her Instagram posts about our perfect life, friends who'd bought into her carefully crafted image. The gap between her online persona and this moment of truth was too wide to bridge. We'll talk at home, she said finally. No, I said. We'll talk right here, right now, in front of everyone, just like you wanted when you decided to perform our marriage for social media. Greg, please. But I was done with private conversations, done with discreet confrontations that could be spun or denied later. This was the moment I'd been building toward, the public reckoning that would make it impossible for either of them to rewrite history. Tell them, I said. Tell everyone here how long you've been planning to leave me. Tell them about the apartment you and Dom looked at last weekend. Tell them about the joint bank account you opened without my knowledge. Lisa had been thorough in her investigation. Very thorough. Alicia's face went white. How did you? The same way I found out about everything else. By paying attention instead of trusting you. The crowd was completely silent now, watching our marriage disintegrate in real time. This wasn't entertainment, it was tragedy, the kind of human wreckage that happens when lies finally catch up with liars. But it was also justice. Alicia looked at her phone, probably calculating how to minimize the damage to her brand, how to spin this disaster into some kind of empowerment narrative. But there was no spinning this. Too many witnesses, too much evidence, too much truth finally dragged into the light. I want a divorce, she said finally. Good, I replied. Because you're not getting anything else. The week following the block party was a masterclass in damage control. At least, that's what Alicia tried to make it. She'd locked down her social media accounts, hired a crisis management consultant, and started crafting a narrative about personal growth and following your authentic truth. But the internet doesn't forget, and neither do neighbors with smartphones. Videos of the confrontation had spread through our building's Facebook group, then to neighborhood forums, then to the broader social media ecosystem where Alicia's followers were dissecting every frame. Her carefully curated brand was collapsing in real time, sponsors pulling out, collaboration deals evaporating. I was staying at Richard's place while Alicia remained in our apartment, probably strategizing with her crisis team about salvaging her career. Dom had moved in with his brother across town, leaving Susie to deal with the aftermath and the kids' questions about why Daddy wasn't coming home. You know this isn't over, right? Richard said over coffee Tuesday morning. She's not going to just disappear quietly. He was right. I'd humiliated Alicia publicly, destroyed her income stream, made it impossible for her to maintain the fiction that she was the victim in our marriage. People like her didn't accept defeat gracefully. The counterattack came that afternoon. I was at work, reviewing inventory reports and trying to focus on something other than my imploding personal life, when my assistant knocked on my office door. Greg, there are some people here to see you. They say it's urgent. 2 police officers stood in the restaurant's lobby, their presence immediately drawing stares from staff and customers. My first thought was that something had happened to Alicia, that her desperation had led to something drastic. Mr. Landon, we need to ask you some questions about a domestic disturbance report. What kind of disturbance? Your wife filed a complaint yesterday. She claims you've been harassing her, making threats, stalking her movements. She's requesting a restraining order. The genius of it was immediately apparent. Alicia couldn't undo the block party confrontation, couldn't erase the evidence of her affair, couldn't rebuild her shattered reputation. But she could reframe the narrative, position herself as the victim of an abusive husband who'd violated her privacy and threatened her safety. That's completely false, I said. I haven't contacted her since Saturday night. I'm staying at a friend's place to give her space. She provided some evidence, the older officer said, consulting his notes. Text messages, recorded phone calls, claims you hired someone to follow her. Lisa. Of course. The private investigator I'd hired to document the affair could easily be spun as stalking, harassment, invasion of privacy. Alicia was turning my evidence gathering into proof of my instability. I hired a private investigator to document my wife's adultery for divorce proceedings. That's completely legal. Maybe so, but the messages she showed us suggest you were planning something more than just divorce. What messages? The officer read from his phone. She wants to perform our marriage for an audience? Fine. They're going to see the real ending. He looked up at me. That sounds like a threat, Mr. Landon. My conversation with Richard at Murphy's. She'd been recording me, probably for weeks, collecting ammunition for exactly this moment. While I'd been playing chess, she'd been playing a completely different game. That wasn't a threat of violence. I was talking about exposing her affair publicly, which I did, legally and without threatening anyone's safety. She also claims you've been following her, showing up places she frequents, intimidating her friends. I followed her once to confirm she was lying about her whereabouts, and I had coffee with a mutual friend, which hardly constitutes intimidation. But I could see how it looked from their perspective. Angry husband discovers wife's affair, hires private investigator, makes statements about public humiliation, then orchestrates a confrontation that destroys her reputation and career. The narrative practically wrote itself. "We're not arresting you," the younger officer said, "but we need you to stay away from your wife and your apartment until the restraining order hearing on Friday. This is ridiculous. I'm the victim here." Maybe so, but right now, she's the one asking for protection. They left me standing in my restaurant lobby, aware that every employee and customer had witnessed my humiliation. Within an hour, I was sure the story would be all over social media. Alicia's crisis management team had probably crafted the entire strategy: file the police report, leak it to social media, reframe the narrative from cheating wife exposed to abusive husband terrorizes innocent woman. I called Lisa from my office, needing to understand how deep this went. "She's good," Lisa admitted when I explained the situation. Filing the restraining order was smart. It makes you look unstable and gives her legal protection while she rebuilds her image. Can she actually get a restraining order? I haven't threatened her. Doesn't matter. The standard is whether she feels threatened, not whether you actually made threats. And hiring me to follow her, that can be interpreted as stalking, even though it was legal. So she wins? She wins this round. But Greg, listen to me carefully. Whatever you're thinking of doing next, don't. She's baited you into looking like the aggressor. Anything you do now will only make it worse. But Lisa didn't understand. This wasn't about winning or losing anymore. This was about truth, about consequences, about making sure that people who destroyed other people's lives didn't get to walk away unscathed. I spent that evening at Richard's place, scrolling through social media and watching Alicia's rehabilitation campaign unfold in real time. Her followers were rallying around her, sharing stories of their own abusive relationships, praising her courage in speaking out. The affair was being reframed as her escape from a controlling marriage, Dom cast as the supportive friend who helped her realize she deserved better. "You need to let this go," Richard said, watching me obsess over the comment threads. "She's turning you into the villain. Every move you make now just proves her point. So I'm supposed to just accept this? Let her destroy our marriage and then claim I was the problem? You're supposed to be smarter than this. You exposed her affair, everyone knows the truth. That should be enough." But it wasn't enough. Not when she was spinning my justified anger into evidence of abuse. Not when she was turning my friends and neighbors into character witnesses for her victimhood narrative. The restraining order hearing was Friday morning. I hired a lawyer, gathered my evidence, prepared to defend myself against accusations that I knew were false, but sounded convincing. The legal system didn't care about context or justice. It cared about documentation and perception. Thursday night, I made a decision that Richard would have tried to talk me out of. I went back to our apartment building, not to see Alicia, not to violate any legal orders, but to retrieve something I'd left in our storage unit, something that would change the entire narrative if used correctly. The building was quiet at 11 p.m., most residents asleep or watching late-night television. I used my key to access the storage area in the basement, navigating between boxes of Christmas decorations and old furniture to reach our unit. Inside, buried beneath winter clothes and photo albums, was a box I'd forgotten about until now. Alicia's college journals, saved during one of our moves and never thrown away. Private thoughts from her early 20s, including detailed accounts of her relationship patterns, her views on marriage and fidelity, her long-term plans for building a social media empire. I'd read them years ago, back when we were still happy and she'd shared them willingly. But now, they represented something different. Evidence of premeditation, of a pattern of behavior that predated our marriage problems. I know I'm not really in love with him, she'd written about a college boyfriend. But he looks good in photos and my friends are jealous. Sometimes that's more important than actual feelings. And later, the key to social media success is authenticity, but not real authenticity. Performed authenticity. Give people the story they want to believe. And most damning, marriage is just another brand partnership. You find someone who enhances your image and makes you look like the person you want to be. I photographed the relevant pages, careful to maintain the context and chronology. This wasn't about violating her privacy. These were her own words, her own philosophy, her own admission that she'd always viewed relationships as performance opportunities. Friday morning's hearing would determine whether she could legally claim to be the victim of my abuse. But the court of public opinion was still in session, and I had new evidence to present. I spent the rest of Thursday night preparing my final move. The restraining order hearing was a disaster, exactly as I'd expected. Alicia arrived with her lawyer, her crisis management consultant, and a perfectly crafted appearance of vulnerability. She wore minimal makeup, a conservative dress, and an expression of brave determination that would have been convincing if I didn't know it was completely calculated. Her testimony was masterful. She painted me as a controlling husband who'd become increasingly unstable as her career success grew, who'd hired private investigators to stalk her, who'd publicly humiliated her when she tried to assert her independence. The affair with Dom was reframed as an emotional connection that developed after our marriage had already failed, evidence of her desperate attempt to find happiness despite my psychological abuse. She had recordings of our conversations, screenshots of my social media posts, witness statements from neighbors who'd seen me aggressively confronting her at the block party. My lawyer did his best to present the context, to explain that I'd been responding to adultery and deception, but the legal system wasn't interested in moral justification. The judge granted a temporary restraining order. I was prohibited from contacting Alicia directly, from coming within 100 yards of her or our apartment, from posting about her on social media. Violation would result in immediate arrest. "Mr. Landon," the judge said as court adjourned, "I understand you feel wronged by your wife's actions, but the law doesn't give you the right to harass or intimidate her, regardless of what she may have done to your marriage." I walked out of the courthouse legally branded as an abuser, while my cheating wife was protected by the same system she'd manipulated with lies and performance. But I wasn't finished. That afternoon, I created a new social media account under a pseudonym and began posting Alicia's college journal entries. Not all of them, just the ones that revealed her true philosophy about relationships, authenticity, and marriage as brand partnership. I provided full context, included dates and explanations, made it clear that these were her own words from years before our relationship problems began. The response was immediate and devastating. Her followers, who'd been rallying around her victim narrative, suddenly had evidence that she'd always viewed relationships as performance opportunities. The journals revealed a pattern of manipulation and calculation that predated any problems in our marriage, that contradicted her claims of being an innocent woman driven to infidelity by an abusive husband. "Marriage is just another brand partnership" became a viral meme within hours. Screenshots spread across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, every platform where Alicia had built her influence. Her remaining sponsors dropped her. Her crisis management team resigned. Her follower count plummeted, as people realized they'd been manipulated by someone who'd openly admitted that authenticity was just another performance. But the real masterstroke came that evening. Susie Rivas, who'd been quietly dealing with her own divorce proceedings, posted a video response to the journal revelations. She'd found Dom's phone, which contained not just messages with Alicia, but evidence of previous affairs, financial deception, and a pattern of manipulation that mirrored Alicia's own behavior. "I want to thank Greg Landon for having the courage to expose the truth," Susie said in her video, which quickly went viral. Not just about his wife's affair, but about the kind of people who destroy families for social media content. Dom and Alicia deserve each other. They're both narcissists who see other people as props in their personal dramas. The video was devastating because Susie was clearly the innocent party, the devoted wife and mother who'd been betrayed by people she trusted. Her pain was real, her anger justified, her condemnation of Alicia and Dom completely credible. Within 24 hours, the narrative had shifted completely. Alicia went from sympathetic victim to manipulative villain, her restraining order looking like another calculated move rather than legitimate protection. The legal system might have branded me as an abuser, but the court of public opinion had reached a different verdict. That's when Alicia made her final desperate play. She showed up at Richard's apartment Sunday morning, somehow having discovered where I was staying, despite the restraining order that was supposed to protect her from me. "Greg, we need to talk," she said, when Richard reluctantly let her in. She looked terrible. No makeup, unwashed hair, the kind of genuine distress that she'd been performing in court, but was now actually experiencing. "You have a restraining order against me," I pointed out. "This conversation is illegal." "I don't care about the restraining order. I care about salvaging something from this disaster." Richard made himself scarce, probably texting Amy about the drama unfolding in his living room. Alicia sat across from me, looking smaller and more vulnerable than I'd seen her in years. "The journals," she said. "How did you get them?" "They were in our storage unit. I retrieved my personal belongings. Those were private thoughts from college. I was a different person then." "Were you?" "Because they describe exactly the person you became. The person who saw our marriage as a brand partnership and our friends as content opportunities." She was quiet for a long moment, perhaps recognizing that denial was pointless. The evidence was overwhelming, the public verdict already rendered. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "I want you to tell the truth, publicly. Admit that you manipulated the restraining order, that I never abused or threatened you, that everything I did was in response to your affair. And if I do that, then I'll stop. No more revelations, no more public humiliation. We'll get divorced quietly, and you can try to rebuild whatever's left of your career." She considered this, probably calculating the cost-benefit analysis of continued warfare versus strategic retreat. "I can't admit to lying in court. That's perjury. Then admit to exaggerating. Admit that you felt threatened by my anger, but that I never actually threatened you. Give me back my reputation, and I'll give you peace. And Dom? Dom made his own choices. He can deal with his own consequences." She agreed, probably because she had no other options. Her career was destroyed, her marriage was over, her reputation was in ruins. The best she could hope for was to stop the bleeding and disappear from public attention. The video she posted that afternoon was a masterpiece of careful wording and strategic admission. She acknowledged that she'd been unfaithful, that I'd had legitimate reasons to be angry, that she may have misinterpreted my actions as threatening when they were actually the understandable response of a betrayed husband. She didn't admit to perjury, but she came close enough to restore my reputation while destroying what remained of hers. The restraining order was dropped the following week. Alicia moved out of our apartment and back in with her parents in California, her influencer career effectively over. Dom's divorce from Susie was finalized within 6 months, his reputation in our community permanently destroyed. I kept our apartment, our friends, our neighborhood. More importantly, I kept the truth. 6 months later, I threw another birthday party on the same rooftop where this all began. Richard was there, along with Mike and Amy, and most of the same friends who'd celebrated with me the year before. Susie came too, having become an unexpected ally in the aftermath of our shared betrayal. Jenny Martinez flew in from Seattle specifically for the party, our friendship having deepened through months of phone calls and text messages. She was thinking about relocating to Portland, she said, having found a job opportunity that excited her. We'd been taking things slowly, both of us cautious about rushing into anything serious so soon after my divorce. But standing on that rooftop, surrounded by people who actually cared about me, watching Jenny laugh at Mike's terrible jokes and help Susie set up the food table, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine happiness. Not performed happiness, not Instagram-worthy moments crafted for an audience, but real contentment with real people who saw me as more than a prop in their personal dramas. "Speech!" Richard called out as the evening wound down, raising his beer in my direction. "Birthday boy needs to say something profound." I looked around at the faces watching me, friends who'd supported me through the worst year of my life, neighbors who'd witnessed my public humiliation and vindication, people who knew the whole story and still chose to be here. "Last year," I said, "someone told me that people don't grow out of who they really are, they just get better at hiding it." I thought that was cynical at the time, but I've learned it's actually hopeful, because it means that good people stay good even when life gets complicated. It means that loyalty and honesty and genuine friendship are constants you can count on. I raised my own beer, scanning the crowd one more time. Thank you for being the kind of people who don't need to perform authenticity because you actually live it. The applause was warm and genuine, the kind of response that comes from people who understand exactly what you mean. Later, as we cleaned up the party remnants and said our goodbyes, Jenny pulled me aside. "That was beautiful," she said. "And completely true." "Think it'll make a good Instagram post?" I asked, then immediately regretted the joke. But Jenny just laughed. "I wouldn't know. I deleted my account months ago. Turns out real life is more interesting than the performed version." She kissed me then, soft and sweet and completely unplanned, the kind of moment that happens when you're not trying to create content but just living your actual life. Standing there on the rooftop where my marriage had effectively ended and my real life had begun, I realized that revenge wasn't about destroying your enemies. It was about building something better than what they'd tried to take from you. Alicia had wanted to perform authenticity for an audience. Instead, she'd taught me the difference between performance and truth, between image and reality, between the life you post about and the life you actually live. It was the most valuable lesson she'd ever given me, though I doubt she'd intended it as a gift. I never saw her again after that final conversation at Richard's apartment. She disappeared from social media entirely, probably working some anonymous job in California while trying to rebuild her life away from the internet that had made and destroyed her. Dom lasted longer in our community, but not much. The factory eventually let him go after his personal drama became too much of a distraction. He moved somewhere down south, I heard, chasing another fresh start with another woman who didn't know his history. Susie thrived. Without Dom's constant need for attention and validation, she discovered that she was actually quite capable of running her own life. She went back to school, got a degree in social work, and now helps other women navigate divorce and betrayal. She's dating a teacher from her kid's school, a quiet man who appreciates her strength and stability. As for me, I married Jenny 2 years later in a small ceremony with no social media presence whatsoever. We bought a house in a different neighborhood, started fresh with people who knew us for who we actually were, rather than who we'd been during our previous disasters. Sometimes I think about Alicia, wonder if she learned anything from the spectacular collapse of her carefully constructed life. But mostly, I don't. She was a chapter in my story, not the whole book, and I've moved on to more interesting plots. The last time I posted anything on social media was a photo from our wedding day, Jenny and me cutting the cake, surrounded by friends and family, everyone laughing at something Mike had just said. No filters, no staging, no careful curation of image over reality. Just life, lived authentically, shared with people who matter. It got 12 likes and 3 comments, and it was perfect.